Hello, everyone. Welcome to office hours for Sapphire Hackathon. We're very excited for everything on the agenda today. We'll be going through an introduction of the Oasis Network. We'll be talking about what Sapphire is exactly, and of course, the Keep It Confidential Sapphire Hackathon, some FAQ that we've been gathering from the community with questions that people have had about Sapphire in the hackathon. And of course, at the end, we'll open it up for a session of Q&A. Feel free to ask your questions here in the chat on Zoom, on the YouTube live stream, or in our Discord. We have team members that are looking around all those channels to collect your questions. So we will start with a brief round of introductions and then get into our presentation from Linda about overview of the Oasis Network. And I'm Meredith, the community manager here at Oasis Foundation.
Hi, I'm Linda, head of ecosystem at Oasis. We're looking forward to a wonderful discussion with you guys.
Hey everybody, I'm Peter. I lead the engineering team at Oasis Labs. Looking forward to helping answer some of the questions that we've gotten about Sapphire and the Oasis Network. Yeah, really happy to be with you guys today.
Hi everyone, I'm Will. I'm the ecosystem growth manager at Oasis. And yeah, I'm looking forward to answering any ecosystem questions that you guys might have regarding Sapphire.
Awesome. Without further ado, let's start the brief overview of what Oasis is, what Sapphire is, and how Sapphire is making Web3 possible. I will share my screen quickly. Let's get started. Cool. Oasis Network. What is Oasis? So Oasis is a privacy-enabled proof-of-stake layer 1 blockchain network. And we're known for our layer architecture. We're the first actually propose this modular architecture design. We have the consensus layer, which is using proof-of-stake consensus mechanism. And on top of consensus, we have the paradigm layer. Currently, we have 3 paradigms on the network: the Emerald, the EVM compatible paradigm, the Cypher, the confidential WebAssembly based paradigm, and Sapphire, which is confidential EVM compatible paradigm, which is recently rolled out, which is also the under the spotlight today. And that we recently launched the hackathon for Sapphire to encourage more developers to build their very first confidential dApps on the Sapphire testnet. Yeah, so Oasis is known for its scalability, highly secure, profits first, and versatile. And let me unpack this for a little bit. We're highly scalable and high throughput, which is evidenced by the transaction speed on the network, and low gas fees. It's much cheaper than running transactions, running computations on Ethereum. And it's highly versatile, primarily because of this layer architecture. So each runtime, we can spin up each runtime specifically for different purposes, different computes. So the Emerald is for EVM compatible compute, And Cypher is primarily for confidential compute, but for people who are more familiar with WebAssembly versus EVM. And Sapphire is primarily for confidential compute, but more for Solidity developers. And going forward, we plan to roll out more paradigms for all kinds of different compute that Web3 needs. Yeah, so we want to briefly talk about what we think Web3 is and how Oasis is best positioned to support Web3. So to bring Web3 to the next stage, you need scalability. In the current Web2 world, all the internet users are really indulged by the services and rendered by the big internet companies like Google or something. It's high TPS. Everything is so fast. In Web3, as we continue to move Web3 forward, everything needs to be very fast as well. So we need to have very high TPS for transactions on Web3. And privacy, as in the Web2 world, we see how internet evolved from HTTP to HTTPS. Same in Web3, we firmly believe things will move from public contract state to confidential contract state. And another critical component in Web3 is the decentralized identity. So to support concepts like decentralized society and to enable decentralized society, like we need all kinds of services that are powered by decentralized identity. Could be reputation credit-based lending. Yeah, so let us introduce Sapphire, the industry very first and only confidential EVM. So first of all, it's privacy enabled. It has out-of-box contract state confidentiality. One of the use cases for that could be MEV proof DEX. So basically, you cannot front run things you cannot see, and stronger security and integrity guarantees, and full EVM compatibility. So we understand how big the Solidity developer, how big the community is, and how much developer gravitate towards Solidity. So we want to make things easier for Solidity developers. If you want to build your first confidential dApp as a Solidity developer, Sapphire is your go-to runtime to do that. And we also have built-in functions, RNG, signing, encryption stuff. And yeah, so to allow us to scratch the surface of what can be built with the confidential EVM. So we talk about reputation credit-based lending, crypto gaming. So currently in the play-to-earn gaming world, a lot of game logic is off-chain because of the lack of privacy. With Sapphire, we're hoping more games could move their game logic on-chain to enable full transparency and auditability. We talk about private debts to eliminate MEV issues. We talk about decentralized identity, decentralized society, and we could have more confidential NFT, data-backed NFT to bring more utility to NFT. Okay, without further ado, let's move to the FAQ section. Yeah, and the Oasis is building the best foundation for Web3, and we also have all kinds of programs such as Oasis Ecosystem Fund and Grants Program to support developers to bring Web3 to the next stage. Cool. Let me hand over to Peter to talk about the questions that our community developers have for Sapphire.
Great, thanks, Linda. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, so over the past, I think over the past week or so since we had our last live stream, we've gotten a lot of questions coming in from the community and developers about Sapphire, about the network. I'm happy to kind of run through some of the most common questions that we've gotten. So to start, question about what is the enabling technology that Sapphire is using for confidential compute? So the answer is trusted execution environments, or TEEs, and specifically Sapphire uses Intel SGX. in the future, I think Linda hinted at the possibility of other paradigms in the future. I think we certainly will continue to explore other T technologies as well, but Sapphire uses Intel SGX. See, next question. Okay, is it possible to port Oasis native contracts to Sapphire? Again, back to kind of the overview of the network Linda gave. So we have a couple of different Oasis official paradigms. There's the Sapphire paradigm, which is a confidential EVM paradigm, and the Cypher paradigm, which is a confidential paradigm for WASM-based smart contracts. And so, Oasis native contracts would be the WASM-based contracts that run on Cypher. Yeah, basically, depending on the needs of what you need to do with your application, you would either build your application in Solidity and deploy it to Sapphire, or you build it probably using Rust and compile to WASM and deploy to Cypher. And so there's not there's no support at the moment for, say, porting a Cypher smart contract onto Sapphire. Next question. Cool. Does Sapphire work on Remix? That's a good question. Oops, I think we skipped ahead here. Does Sapphire work on Remix? So the short answer is it's not supported yet, but we would like to support it soon in the future. The initial work we've done is adding support for Hardhat and Truffle, which definitely two of the most common frameworks that developers use. We have a lot of documentation on that. We'd like to support Remix in the future, and so it's definitely something that will definitely a feedback that we'll take and keep in mind. Next question, is privacy on Sapphire optional? And so this is a really good question. I think the way that we like to think of it is that privacy on Sapphire is configurable. And so what that means is that an application based on smart contracts. So the smart contracts themselves can handle both data that's confidential and hidden, as well as other data that's made public. And so it's really up to the developer of the application to decide what information needs to be kept private and what information is intended to be shared publicly. Some examples of this that you could think of. Maybe if you had a kind of a private token where you have a bunch of different token holders, and maybe the individual balances of different users, so their holdings of that token could be private and maybe only accessible to the to that user, but say the total supply of the token, obviously you would probably want that to be public. And so as the depending on the requirements of the application, the developer can decide what data to keep private or to restrict access to a particular wallet, or what data to have completely public. Next, how can we track the transactions on Sapphire given that it's a confidential paradigm? Yeah, so this is a good question, in that it kind of it allows us to kind of illustrate what the privacy model of Sapphire is. And so basically it is possible to track certain things about transactions, basically transaction metadata. And so at the kind of the transaction layer in Sapphire, all of the metadata that's associated with the transaction is public. And so this is the wallet that sent the transaction, the destination of the transaction, the to address of the transaction. So this, in the case of simple transfer transaction, this could be an externally owned account. In the case of a smart contract call, this would be the address of the smart contract that's being called. Also, the value associated with the transaction in the Paratime's native token is also public. And so, on Sapphire Testnet, this is test token. And so if I send a transfer of test token from my wallet to Linda's wallet, all of that information is public, the same way that it would be in any other EVM based runtime. And so, this is because the native token of the Paratime is not a privacy coin. It's not a private token. It's the gas token that's used for transactions in the Paratime. What is private and is encrypted associated with the transaction is the data field of the transaction, which that contains all of the data that's being sent from the caller to the smart contract, and so that data is always encrypted. Next question. Is it possible to call a function of a contract without revealing my public address? I was testing a basic contract on Testnet with a very simple deposit and withdraw function, and the transaction user contract amounts were visible throughout. Yeah, so this going back to what we covered on the last question. So the native token in the Sapphire Paradigm is not a privacy token. It's not a private token. But Sapphire does allow you as a developer to create a token contract that, for example, wraps the native token, and you can keep any of those details private associated with that wrapped token. And so, yeah, again, I think the main takeaway point here is just to understand that the native token in Sapphire is not a private token, but you can create token contracts that keep various details private. Next one. Yeah, where can I get test tokens from? So we have a Testnet Faucet. I think we might quickly jump to the Testnet Faucet here. So yeah, really easy. You can choose consensus layer or any of the 3 paratimes that are running on Testnet to receive. I think it's 10 test tokens every time you do a request. Yeah, so really easy to go and get more than enough test token to get started and start sending transactions to the Testnet. Cool. Another one about kind of resources on the Sapphire Testnet. So where's the block explorer? How can I see smart contracts that are being created in Sapphire? So yeah, we have a block explorer for the Sapphire Testnet. If anyone that's familiar with the Emerald Paradigm, it's a similar similar interface to the Emerald Paradigm block explorer. So it's got the basics to the question that we had before, like how can I track what transactions are doing on the network? Like we can see with the transactions that recent transactions, we can see the source and destination and the amount associated with the transaction. I do think we do want to call out that we are working on a new and improved block explorer that will have some special handling for around confidentiality that will really hopefully make it a lot easier for both end users and developers who are building applications on Sapphire to really understand what's going on with confidential transactions. And so yeah, we're excited about that. Keep a lookout for that. That's an active development right now. Okay, the next question: how does gas work on Sapphire when everything is confidential? This is also a really good question, as it touches on some important considerations for developers who are building confidential smart contracts. And so the first part of the answer is gas works the same as it does in a standard EVM. So when you have a transaction that calls a smart contract and executes some code, gas metering works the same way that it works in a standard EVM. The gas usage of a transaction is public, reported on chain, and you pay a gas fee that's based on how much gas the transaction used. And so the next thing that you might kind of realize is that this gas usage, when dealing with confidential data, could be a potential side channel by which some information could leak about the sensitive data. And so this is similar to other kinds of side channels that you have in non-blockchain situations with just standard code that's running on sensitive data based on kind of the resources that the computation is using. So probably the most common side channel that people are familiar with is a timing side channel. So basically, depending on the data that a program's operating on, the amount of time that it might take for the program to run, for some operation to be performed, could be dependent on the value of sensitive data. And so by observing that, you might be able to figure something out about the value of that data. So gas usage in the smart contract world is a similar kind of side channel, where if you have a execution of your smart contract that depends on the value of some sensitive data, the amount of gas used by a transaction could reveal something about the data itself. And so, so this is it's actually really, it's really kind of nuanced, important topic. We have some in our documentation, we have some suggestions on how developers can try to avoid side channels in smart contracts they write. I think in the future we're thinking a lot about ways that we can help developers write confidential smart contracts that are more secure, more higher levels of guarantee for confidentiality. And so to that end, I think you can definitely expect us to come out with some more extensive documentation about how to avoid common pitfalls, how to avoid inadvertently leaking data in a confidential smart contract. Also, I think we're also thinking about building some libraries that you could use in your smart contracts to help mitigate possible side channels and other unintentional leaks of sensitive data. And so it's an important topic, and definitely something that will be looking for feedback from developers on, as well as kind of working with developers in the community to help to provide more tools and documentation to avoid these kinds of pitfalls. Cool. Let's see, another question about gas. How expensive will gas be on Sapphire versus Emerald? at a high level, the short answer is we expect it to be fairly comparable, but the price of gas for transactions on the Oasis network is something that's determined by the node operators who operate nodes on the decentralized network, and so ultimately this is something that that node operators have to decide for themselves on, what's the kind of the minimum gas price that they will accept. But at this point, we expect things to be pretty comparable to Emerald. The kind of the resource requirements and kind of cost for operating a Sapphire node for an operator versus an Emerald node, probably relatively comparable. Although we should note that there are some additional requirements for running a Sapphire node versus running an Emerald node, and so node operators will need to use machines that have have Intel SGX enabled to run a Sapphire node. But we do in our node operator community on mainnet. Currently, we do have a bunch of node operators who are running SGX nodes and who have access to that. Let's see, next one. Let's see, how does the Sapphire Paradigm talk to the EVM? Yeah, so this gets a little bit to like, what is the underlying kind of architecture look like of the Paradigm and of Sapphire. So Sapphire runs its own implementation of EVM, and so it actually in terms of what the code base looks like, it shares the EVM that Sapphire uses as a shared code base with the Emerald Paradigm, which we launched earlier this year and has gone through it's pretty tried and tested at this point. We've the Emerald Paradigm has been running on mainnet for close to 8 or 9 months now, and we've got a lot of applications running on Emerald, and we've had a lot of traffic, and so yeah, that the EVM implementation is borrowed from Emerald, obviously with some extensions to specifically to support confidentiality, but yeah, so Sapphire does have its own EVM. The next one. Yeah, so what is the difference between Sapphire, Emerald, Cypher, and Parcel? Yeah, so can kind of map out what our what our kind of different offerings that are that have been released by Oasis are. So Sapphire, as Linda described earlier, is an EVM paradigm that supports confidentiality and confidential smart contracts. And so that's our newest paradigm, currently running on Testnet. Emerald is a standard EVM paradigm that supports normal EVM-based applications, has low gas fees, high throughput, has been running on mainnet for since early this year. The Cypher paradigm is also a paradigm that supports confidential smart contracts, but instead of EVM-based smart contracts, it supports Oasis smart contracts that are based on Boson. And then finally, Parcel is not a separate paradigm, but it's a set of data governance APIs that are designed to allow developers who are building applications that need data governance to kind of to really build that very easily and utilize the unique technology of Oasis. Let's see, next one. How do I get started to write smart contracts on Sapphire? And so that was, this is something that was really one of the main motivating factors for us building a confidential EVM paradigm in Sapphire. So it's actually really easy to get started. So if you can write a smart contract in Solidity, you can immediately get started on Sapphire. I think we have a link here to our quick start guide, but within a couple minutes, you should be able to take your existing smart contracts that are written in Solidity and deploy them to Sapphire and start playing around with it. So that's really really one of the things that we really want to highlight about Sapphire is that it's really easy to get started as a Solidity developer. Cool. So another question, kind of about comparing the Sapphire experience to Emerald or standard EVM. So does Sapphire interact with MetaMask the same way as Emerald from the developer and end user point of view? So yeah, good question. So the short answer is yes, it's mostly the same. And again, this was one of our real, one of the goals in designing Sapphire was making this the same or as close as possible to the same experience that developers and end users are used to. So kind of the important building block for being able to have a very close kind of developer experience to a standard EVM is the compatibility library that we've released for Sapphire. So this is a TypeScript based compatibility library that should get you most of the way there for applications that are built using the popular JavaScript libraries like ethers.js, web3.js. And so, so the idea here is that if you're using those popular frameworks, by adding, just a couple of lines of code, you should be able to take your application and start running it on Sapphire. Obviously, there are a lot of corner cases, a lot of caveats that can come up. We have some in our docs. We have a few kind of FAQs about common, troubleshooting common issues that can come up. Also, we're very active in our developer channels on our community Discord, in kind of working with developers, helping you out, troubleshooting when issues come up, and yeah, we love getting feedback from developers, and it helps us, improve the kind of FAQs and troubleshooting sections of our docs that we would like to continue to expand. I guess maybe if we could jump back to the previous one to kind of talk about the end user perspective as well. So from an end user perspective, yeah, so Sapphire works with standard, ETH compatible wallets like Metamask. Yeah, from an end user perspective, definitely should be a very familiar user experience. Okay, do we have the equivalent ERC standard for tokens on Sapphire? Great question, and something that we're really thinking a lot about. And so yeah, so we certainly realize the value that these token standards like ERC20, 721 have had on Ethereum compatible networks, and really standardizing standardizing things, being able to have well-known templates like the Open Zeppelin libraries and templates to kind of ease development, and that's been hugely valuable to that ecosystem. In a similar way for confidential smart contracts like Sapphire supports, we see a huge value in having kind of some equivalent kind of confidential token standards. So you could imagine like a confidential fungible token that's kind of similar to ERC20. You could have a confidential NFT standard as well. So we see a huge value in this, and so we're working with the community to develop some standards for these kinds of things. We expect to send out an RFP to ask more kind of officially for more proposals from the community for standards that we could adopt. So we see this as a very important step in kind of building an ecosystem around development of confidential smart contracts, and you can expect to hear more about this soon. We're very excited about it. Let's see. So, okay, this question's about kind of how Sapphire compares to other privacy technologies. So how does a confidential smart contract fundamentally differ from tools and coins such as Monero, for example? And so, the short answer is they're fundamentally different. As we touched on in a few of the previous answers, confidential smart contracts are not privacy coins, and so and in fact, the native token of the Sapphire Paradigm is not a privacy token. So these kinds of privacy coins are really designed for use cases around being able to have kind of anonymous or untraceable transactions, which is definitely there's a lot of demand for this. It's it's an important use case, but what you can do with smart contracts confidential smart contracts goes very far beyond just the use case of being able to have anonymous or untraceable transactions. And so really, what we're most excited about with confidential smart contracts is, allowing people to really build, really advanced applications that, that have both, private state as well as public state, and can live fully on chain. And, it's, and really opening it up for developers to bring more of their application logic on chain, as well as enable new kinds of applications. And so I think the way that I would think of it is, confidential smart contracts are really intended to enable like this huge world of possible applications to build on top, whereas these privacy coins really a much kind of more narrow use case. Cool. So a question kind of about the Oasis network architecture. How do the paradigms on Oasis network differ from rollups? This is a good observation, in that there are a lot of similarities between paradigms on the Oasis network and the way that some other systems that are described as rollups work. And so probably the key point to call out is that kind of the high level idea of rollups and paradigms and scalability on the Oasis network is the same, in that you want to separate computation from consensus. And so this is this is a concept that was proposed very early on by Oasis in the kind of initial architecture of the platform, and I think since then has gotten a lot of become a popular idea for scaling across the industry. If you want to kind of think of the Oasis network and the Paradigm architecture in the kind of in the structure of as a rollup, then you would say that the way that the Oasis network does fraud proofs is discrepancy detection, which is the mechanism by which Oasis can allow Paradign's to run with basically the same security properties of the consensus layer, but with a much smaller degree of replication. There are a lot of other types of rollups. I think the two that we're probably most familiar with would be kind of open challenge based rollups and zero knowledge based rollups, and so those are both kind of two other approaches to doing fraud proofs. I think what we're showing here is just we've got a blog post where we kind of go into more detail about this and kind of explore how the architecture of the Paradigm layer on the Oasis network could be thought of in the context of rollups. And so, we have a lot more information about that. But I do think to me, one of the, when I think about the Oasis network and rollups, I mean, I think it's interesting to see that this idea of separating computation from consensus that the Oasis network proposed very early on is now becoming a more and more commonly used technique for scaling. I think I'll turn. I think we've got some questions about kind of the operations and their requirements for the hackathon. We'll turn this over to Meredith.
Cool. Thanks so much, Peter, for those thorough answers that you just gave us throughout the FAQ. So question here about submitting to the hackathon. Can a submission for the hackathon be a backend only delivery, smart contracts with its corresponding API and documentation, or must it be a full dApp including front end? What are the eligibility criteria for participating in the hackathon? So the answer to that question is yes, it can definitely be backend only as long as it works on Testnet. This is on the Sapphire testnet, not on mainnet yet. So we'll take this opportunity to go through some of the requirements for submitting your project to the Keep It Confidential Sapphire Hackathon, as well as judging criteria. So when it comes to your submission, we kept it pretty simple. You need to provide a short summary of your project, including a description of what it is and how you want to evolve it. Provide a link to your code repository for judging and testing. The code must be open sourced. Provide smart contract deployment links and include a video that's less than 5 minutes that's going to show how your project works and why you want to build it. Videos must be uploaded to YouTube, Vimeo, or a similar site and made public. And then for the judging criteria, we're looking at several factors here. The first, of course, is implementation quality. So how does this project demonstrate high quality development, potential impact, how large of an impact the project could have, and how many users could the project potentially attract? Innovation. So we're looking for really creative and unique, innovative ideas for this hackathon. And user experience. How does the project's design make the user experience easy? Originality. The project must be different from any other app submitted by the same submitter team or organization, and it must be the original work of the submitter. It must be solely owned by the submitter and not violate the IP rights of any other person or entity. And the main factor here, of course, is confidentiality. Since Sapphire is the first and only confidential EVM, we want these dApps submitted to this hackathon to be utilizing confidentiality really well. If you're interested in finding a team, I know that we have received quite a few submissions through our ClickUp form about finding a team to work with. You can head over to our Discord, and we have a channel specifically for that. And then this hackathon is running from September 14th, 2022 to October 14th, 2022. So you still have plenty of time to get those submissions in and collaborate with other people who are potentially interested in participating in the hackathon with you. And we will go ahead and move on to the Q&A portion of this. We received a lot of great questions throughout our channels. Thank you everyone for your participation and interest in this office hours. The first question is a community related question. Are there any technical support provided on any of the community channels like Discord for anyone trying to understand and build on top of Oasis? As Peter mentioned during his FAQ session, our engineers and moderation team are very, very active on Discord. We want to support developers who are interested in building on Sapphire and any of our other paradigms. So yes, specifically for the hackathon, we have the hackathon channel on Discord, the Find a Team channel, and then there is the Sapphire Paradigm channel. So you'll be able to find any questions that you might have. Our engineers will be there to answer you. We also have a wealth of resources that we can share. I'm going to send the link tree in the Zoom chat here so you can join our Discord, join our Reddit, any other channels. We are everywhere waiting for people to ask these great questions. So yeah, we'll head over to the next question.
Oh yeah, thanks, Meredith. What are the current incentives for developers to deploy on Sapphire? Yeah, so I think we briefly touched base on that during our presentation. We have a very robust grants program that's primarily for projects slightly more early stage. And then we have Ecosystem Fund, $235 million ecosystem fund, sponsored by quite a few notable industry partners. And that ecosystem fund is slightly geared towards projects are a bit more mature, more established with a product and with a roadmap as to how they want to grow the product as well as grow their community and marketing. Cool. And we'll move on to the next one. This is from community member. I love DeFi, and most specifically, I enjoy lending and LP farming on various chains. How does Sapphire help improve the DeFi scene? Great, we love DeFi as well. How does Sapphire improve DeFi scene? So as we briefly touch base in the presentation, we kind of like share some of the use cases we think Sapphire can help tackle. One is MEV proof DEX. So we know a few a few project teams are already working on that. And the second is reputation or credit score based lending. So current lending scene, if you see Avi or some other lending protocols, those are primarily targeting crypto enthusiasts, crypto people who are already in crypto. But lending is more than just people who use crypto. And how do we bring lending to the mainstream? People who are really tackling some of the real issues. Could be mortgage issues, could be student loan issues. How could decentralized lending really help those people? So we think one way to get there is one of the issues that we currently have with lending is this kind of like over-collateralization. And that's not necessarily helping mainstream problems that people might have. So with reputation or credit score based, we might be able, the project team who are working on those lending protocol might be able to bring lending to the mainstream. And I'll have my colleague Will to chime in a bit more on this as well.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. Yeah, I think DeFi is definitely one of the most popular pillars of Web3. And as you said, Sapphire is a great development environment for both an MEV resistant DEX and under collateralized lending. In terms of the MEV resistant DEX, what's so great is that it can function exactly and the user experience can be exactly like DEX is currently on EVMs, where it just instead of now the benefit is that you don't have this arbitrage opportunity occurring where miners or people viewing the blockchain sort of see your transaction before it happens. They analyze what your slippage tolerance is. Then they front run you, and then they sell it back to you at the price at like your highest slippage point. And so they're taking like a percentage or two from every trade you make, which has cost people hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars in DeFi so far. And so, and it's been like a really heavily researched area. People are really trying to solve this problem, and the problem becomes like almost trivial to solve with Sapphire. So that's a really interesting use case, is MEV on trades and just throughout DeFi in general, saving users a percentage point or two on every single transaction they make. And for under collateralized lending, I think this goes back to again what Linda was saying. Sapphire is just because it has confidentiality, it's a better environment to do like sort of decentralized identity. If you're going to put credit scores, you're going to put maybe bank statements, net worth statements, anything like that on the blockchain. It's all public on other EVMs or any other network really. And so this is not something that is really conducive to large institutions, retail traders, or anyone for that matter. So because it's a better environment for DID, we can do things like under collateralized lending, which is based off of reputation, and then even expanding on that. It doesn't have to be under collateralized lending. It can also be whitelisted sort of applications. So if your applications are trying to meet certain requirements or have maybe regulatory concerns or something like that, they can handle all that with this sort of DID that's made possible with Sapphire. So I think those are like the really major areas. And then the one extra point I wanted to mention is that with under collateralized lending, like Linda said, you get access to new asset classes, which just overall increases what DeFi can do. And so now you can gain yields on lending for maybe real estate or other real world assets. And so it just really expands all the capabilities of DeFi in a much more convenient way.
Awesome. Next one. How can gaming and NFT product utilize confidentiality? So for gaming, I can start with gaming. So for gaming, let's say a card game or a poker game, and current practice to bring this on chain is you have the game logic is primarily off chain, because otherwise other people, if you deal cards, people will see like their counterparty's cards, and then that you cannot do card games like that. So that's the fairly easy explanation how Sapphire can bring simple games such as card games or any sort of game of chance to bring on chain and to have game logic on chain. So we can bring more transparency, auditability, so essentially become a trustless game of chance. So that could be very interesting. And the NFT. So I think a few months ago we had this artist called Bishop, and then he launched this collection called Army Minions. It's a very interesting collection, and every item of the collection is generated via math equations. And he did something very interesting with the community where like only the NFT holder can have the underlying math equations. And then his purpose of doing that is so you have the underlying math equations, and then you can regenerate NFT on your own using that formula. So that is a typical example of confidential NFT. And with Sapphire, you can do that where like only the NFT holders has some access info embedded in the NFT, where that is not visible to everyone on chain. So so that's just the two examples of how Sapphire can help give a chance confidential NFT those use cases. Will, do you want to chime in as well?
Yeah, I'd love to. So yeah, I think Linda made a great point about, card games. But I'd like to expand that. Like really, I think almost all games, that are popular, have some aspects of privacy that are involved, like a real-time strategy game, has fog of war and these type of things. And so whenever I develop sort of the ethos of Web3 is that, we want to take more things, put them on chain, make more things trustless, make more things high integrity. And so right now, if you want privacy, you have to sacrifice the high integrity and trustless nature because you have to take it off chain. And now you don't get like all the benefits that come with Web3. And I think Web3 it has like tremendous benefits for gaming. And so you don't really want to do you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Sapphire allows you to both have privacy and keep things on chain, put more things on chain, and so you don't have to make this sacrifice. And I really think that that's a compelling use case for gaming. And for the NFTs, I think that the area, I said this on the last office hours, but the area that I've been sort of getting excited about and thinking about a lot is for NFT minting and auctioning mechanisms, because like currently, I think everyone's aware that NFT mints have not been going very well, at least popular ones, because they sort of have these extremely high gas fees in order to get your transaction looked at or it entered into the mempool. Sometimes you pay the super high gas fees and you still don't get into the mempool, and so you've wasted your gas fees. The price discovery is super poor because people are paying mostly in gas, and that means it's not going to the NFT artist or creator. And in addition to that, like while this is going on, if you're trying to make like a simple DeFi trade or do any other transaction on the network, it's completely unusable because of the congestion. So with Sapphire, you can do a lot of really cool auction mechanisms by either like hiding people's bids or by hiding the end time of the auction. So when you hide people's bids, you can do something like a second price auction, which is a fairly popular auction mechanisms in like traditional markets, where the first bidder essentially, if there's a serialized collection, the person who has the highest bid pays the price of the second highest bid. The person who has the second highest bid pays the price of the third. And so you have like a really efficient auction mechanism, price discovery auction mechanism, and where people like don't like super overpay for something. But this sort of falls apart if you don't have the confidentiality and the bids are not private, because then people will just like undercut each other and kind of destroy the efficiency that occurs. And then for the hiding of the time, there's something called a candle auction, where you maybe have like an auction that occurs over 1 to 3 days, and it ends at a random time during that time period. So this is only possible in Sapphire because if you were to like say like end on x86 block on Ethereum or any other EVM, then everyone would be able to see, and it wouldn't be random, it wouldn't even be confidential. And so Sapphire is the only one that can do this. And the game theory for why this is beneficial is because if you don't know when the auction is going to end, you sort of have to put the highest bid that you're willing to pay immediately. And again, you get like a better price discovery model. You have lower gas fees because people are not like putting in last second eBay style bids. And overall, this also, because this is occurring over a few days and has better price discovery and it has less wasted gas, you also like just don't congest the network. So it solves like a lot of the problems that are currently occurring in the NFT marketplaces today.
Cool. Thanks, Will. Let's move on to the next question. What are the essential differences?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say I could take the next couple of questions, Linda.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Peter.
I think so. I think we've got a handful more kind of technical questions. Happy to answer. First one: which essential differences exist between Sapphire Ts, trusted execution environments, and Parcel secure enclaves? So a couple of important differences. Sapphire uses Intel SGX. Parcel uses AMD SEV, which is a secure encrypted virtualization. From a kind of developer interface perspective, the interface by which developers build compute on those build programs that run on Sapphire versus Parcel is also different. So for Sapphire, it's EVM smart contracts. For Parcel, it's Docker images and Docker containers. And so that the two different platforms are basically suitable for different kinds of applications. Kind of a related question: how easy is it to swap from Intel SGX to another T in the future? Yeah, definitely something that we think a lot about. So the reason why Intel SGX is at the moment the best fit for confidential smart contracts is that among all of the different technologies that are kind of widely available on the market, SGX has the best support for remote attestation, and so that means establishing trust on that a otherwise untrusted remote node is actually running the secure platform. And so most of the other technologies don't have really as good support for remote attestation at the moment. We expect this, hopefully will change. There will continue to be development in this area among different different vendors, and so definitely something that we would consider in the future based on what's available on the market. Another question related to Parcel: could data be tokenized in the Sapphire paradigm the same way that it can be done in Parcel? So yeah, it should be possible. So currently Parcel connects to Emerald on mainnet via a bridge, the Emerald paradigm on mainnet via a bridge. Once Sapphire is on mainnet, we would expect that we'd be able to connect Parcel to Sapphire as well. And so you'd be able to use the same data tokenization APIs with Sapphire as well. Let's see next. Why would someone choose Sapphire over the secret network confidential chain? There are some things about Sapphire and secret that are similar, and some things that are different. So the thing that's similar is that both platforms are using Intel SGX to support confidential compute. The key difference is that Secret does not support EVM smart contracts. So it supports, I believe, COSM WASM smart contracts, whereas Sapphire, we think, is a more familiar development environment for Web3 developers, and that potentially they'll have an easier time kind of getting started with Sapphire. Let's see, next question. Is it possible to have access level sharing for selected parties to view encrypted data aside from the sender and receiver? Yes, so this is exactly what we enable via the kind of configurable privacy in Sapphire. And so the smart contract developer can define the access control logic for data in their smart contract. And so, you can basically do access control based on the wallet that's calling that method of the smart contract. And so, yes, definitely possible. And one of the things that, is we think a cool, unique feature of Sapphire. Let's see, one more. How does Oasis Sapphire compare to Zcash? Yeah, so similar to the question before about other privacy coins, yeah, so Sapphire has confidential smart contracts, EVM compatibility, and these most of these other kind of privacy coins are really focused just on kind of anonymous, untraceable transactions. And I think that's all the technical questions that I had in my list here.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. I'll hand over to, let's hand over to Meredith to conclude the session.
Cool. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. We hope that you got answers to many of your questions. But like I said before, feel free to hop over to any of our community channels to ask any questions that went unanswered or more technical questions that maybe could not be easily answered in a video session such as this. We're happy and eager to help you all build on Sapphire and submit your projects to the Keep It Confidential Hackathon. Linda, Peter, Will, thank you for your thorough answers on today's session, and we will see you at our next event. So thanks, everyone.